Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video is yet another Minotaur replay. Why? Well, you guys keep sending me these wonderful Minotaur replays and I enjoy watching them. This one comes from Chibster. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. And it's domination match mode on, I want to say this is the Shatter map. Or maybe Canada. I don't remember. Map doesn't matter. You all know it, especially if you play high tiers. Some of his team has agreed that he's going to head towards the B cap point, and for the most part it looks like his team is deciding B and possibly C are where they want to go. Not a lot of action going on over at A, though they do have one of their destroyers heading that direction. They start off the battle with a destroyer advantage, and that's somewhat important because having a destroyer advantage is always a good thing. But of course, the enemy team already capping the B cap point, and that's because they have a Harborovsk over there, and he is going to be a bit of a problem as he drops off detectability, and I do believe that's due to his smoke screen there, so obviously chose the smoke over a repair. Probably what saves him here. Chibster does get his torpedoes away, and the Minotaur does have pretty good long-range torpedoes. And of course, he's going to turn hard and get behind this island, as enemy torpedoes coming down that center channel could pose a bit of a problem if he doesn't. The enemy team has been driven out of the B cap point. But pay attention to the aircraft carriers in this game, because they are going to be fairly active all the way to the end. But Chibster, he's going to do the best he can to shoot down as many of those planes as possible. Enemy torpedoes finally reaching him, but there's no risk of them hitting him, as he's well behind the island here. Pops his smoke screen as he's detected there briefly for just a split second. That's probably due to the aircraft flying a little too close for comfort, but he's going to shoot those airplanes down. Of course, these are higher tier carriers, and they do seem to have an infinite number of these aircraft. But he's going to sit here in his smoke screen for a little bit and kind of assess the situation. Friendly destroyer that pushed up into the A cap point did manage to secure the A cap point, and he's laying down a smoke screen. The team, looking at the situation, has pretty much decided to leave C alone and instead turned around, and they're going to focus on the B cap point and defending A. Now, because his team has managed to capture a cap point, of course, that means his team is gaining those cap points early on in this battle, and having cap points earlier in the game is definitely one way to secure victory. He's going to go ahead and try and get shots over this island at that enemy cruiser off in the distance, and I'm actually kind of impressed these shots clear this island, and kind of a little pissed off because I feel like I've been on the receiving end of somebody doing just that. And now I know what you're doing, you sneaky bastards. I will keep my eyes out in the future. Looking at the situation, though, not a lot of action going on at the moment. Most of his team seems to be pretty hard and concentrated now over at the A cap point. Several of the ships at the A cap point have taken a lot of damage. And one in particular, very low health. He might end up dying, and he does. First blood goes to the enemy. That's a little unfortunate, but it looks like the enemy team has been driven out or decided to stop bothering at the C cap point, as his team looks like they've started capping it. And with any luck, they'll be able to secure the C cap point and hang on to that and regain the points from losing that ship. Chibster is heading towards the B cap point, again, trying to keep these islands between him and some of the hard-hitting guns of battleships. Of course, the Minotaur, excellent rate of fire, good torpedoes, terrible, terrible armor when dealing with high-tier battleships. And speaking of high-tier battleships, enemy battleship gets deleted by torpedoes. So that's definitely going to give his team a nice advantage. There's an enemy battleship coming down the slot here into the B cap point, but there's also an enemy cruiser that's coming down this slot here, and it looks like it's a Prince Eugen or an Admiral Hipper there. And that cruiser, well, he's in for a bit of a nasty surprise as Chibster has dropped his torpedoes, originally targeting that battleship, but this cruiser is just sailing in a straight line down this channel. And of course he pops his smoke screen and he starts laying into him with that armor piercing. Broadside cruiser at this kind of range really doesn't stand much of a chance against the Minotaur, but really doesn't stand much of a chance against the Minotaur torpedoes, which he did, in fact, continue sailing in a nice straight line to run into. And that's Chibster's first secured kill of the game, with many more to come. Enemy team loses one of their destroyers, and that's really gonna hurt them, because of course, now they're up against 4 enemy destroyers. Well, they only have 2, but that's of course really good for Chibster's team, because that means they only have to deal with 2 destroyers. But of course, Friendly Destroyers gotta YOLO and get himself offed by this battleship up here. And this battleship player, he's not being as careless as the cruiser in front of him, and he is turned hard and away. He's trying to hug that island to avoid any potential torpedoes that might be headed his direction. And of course, given that there's a smokescreen that's angrily firing at him, there's a very strong probability that that is the case. But Chibster does have to be careful, though, that the smokescreen is starting to get long in the tooth and probably going to be dissipating here very shortly. And the last thing you want is to be broadside onto a Montana, especially at these kinds of ranges. Montana might not be best known for causing a lot of damage, not compared to the Yamato, but against a nice, soft, juicy target like a Minotaur, yeah, it'd definitely be a problem. Of course, he's also got other problems as the enemy team is pushing up on the other side of him. And now that his smokescreen's dissipated, he's got himself between the guns of 2 very large and very angry battleships. But the enemy team has managed to stay in the game effectively, capping the C cap point, pushing out or killing that destroyer that was there, but also taking out another ship on his team, and that's going to basically equal out the scores there. But Chibster takes that big hit, he risked that broadside with the Montana, and he paid for it dearly. Of course, British cruiser, he's got the repair, but he still has to deal with the fact that that battleship could shoot at him, but not anymore because the battleship dies from his torpedoes. And that's his second, possibly third confirmed kill in this game, with many more. But now he's got to deal with this Baltimore, along with all the big nasty guns behind him. So he's doing what any good cruiser player should be doing in this situation. He's keeping up the fire, but he's maneuvering that ship around, and he's constantly swinging the ship about, trying to stay angled to the incoming hostile rounds from astern. And while he is still detected, and he's still getting shots in there from some pretty big ships, one of the best things that he can do at this point is try and use the island as an additional rock armor. And that's exactly what he's going to do. He's got the island between him and the enemy team, and now he's free to stealthily change positions. Of course, aircraft, always the wild card when dealing with aircraft carriers, and here come more of them. Plus, enemy destroyer has popped up, and that's the Z-52. This Z-52, well, we know how Z-52 armor reacts, and pretty much dealing with a Z-52 and a Minotaur should be really, really easy. But of course, it looks like there's actually 2 destroyers sitting in that smokescreen based on the fire. That Z-52 putting out a nice volume of fire, combined with the aircraft strike, Chibster takes a lot of damage there. And again, he's going between the islands here, and that's going to save him from the torpedoes from the Z-52. But he did put torpedoes out into that smokescreen, and if there is in fact a second ship sitting in that smokescreen, then there's a strong probability that that person is going to stay there and get nailed, which is always a nice thing. Yep, sure enough, sinks one of the 2 remaining enemy destroyers, but the Z-52 gets away almost unscathed here. But again, now he's got himself in a bad situation. He's broadside onto a Minotaur, and the Z-52 loves to soak up armor piercing. But the island saves him and blocks Chibster's shots. Really unfortunate. The enemy team now only has 1 destroyer left, and that's kind of a big deal. Especially because that destroyer is going to go on and have a fantastic game if he can get away from Chibster. Enemy aircraft carrier just not leaving him alone, drops even more bombs on his ass and sets him on fire again. Quickly extinguishes the fire, and he's in a position where his heal is back available, but there's not really a lot of health to heal at this point, so there's no point in activating it. He has popped his smokescreen, so he's safe somewhat for now. Does need to be careful that destroyer doesn't come back around and cause him problems with torpedoes. However, enemy battleship the Amagi, he's doing the exact same thing that that Hipper did at the beginning of the battle, sailing in a nice straight line when there's a smokescreen that's angrily shooting at him. And that's going to be another kill for Chibster, and that's his 4th kill in the game. And just look how much damage he's done at this point. The enemy team down to 4 ships, and one of those ships is AFK. You can see him there on the minimap, stationary in position and not moving. The enemy team, oh man, you can really tell the players that pulled the game out of their ass and tried hard on the enemy team, because the enemy team does have 2 of the cap points, and they've done a reasonable amount of damage themselves, but those 2 cap points is really what's keeping them in the game. Chibster taking shots off at that Z-52 in the distance over the island. At that kind of range, though, very hard to tell if he's actually going to manage to hit him. The destroyer probably going to be maneuvering pretty hard and knowing that he was targeted. But looking at the situation, Chibster is now in a really good position to take the B cap point and then go and take the C cap point. The enemy team, as you can see, 3 of their 4 ships are all back over on that side. And his team has got some reasonable presence at the A cap point, which means they're not really in much danger of losing the A cap point anytime soon. So stopping the enemy team from gaining points by capturing the B cap point, as Chibster's doing, is really going to set them up for a secured victory. He's trying to put shots out here at this cruiser in the distance, but again, the flight times and the shell arcs on the Minotaur, not the best for hitting at range when your target's maneuvering. But as I said, remember, one of those remaining ships is AFK, and he is just sitting there in the open. And of course, it's a premium ship too. Now, he's no longer detected, as the ship that was close enough to detect him has died, and again, that's mostly thanks to the enemy destroyer on their team. That Z-52 really doing a damn good job. But he does pop up here as the last remaining destroyer on Chibster's team gets close enough. And while Chibster is sailing away, enemy cruiser, still AFK, not moving, is just barely in range. Might as well get some free damage XP done. In the meantime, he and friendly Mogami back there behind the island have decided that they're going to go up and take the C cap point. Well, they decided this, but they didn't communicate it. Not yet, anyway. The real question and the big wild card here is, where is that enemy aircraft carrier? He still has planes left, and he's still being very active and very persistent in spotting and causing damage. And honestly, really, if he's got any dive bombers left, if he's got any torpedo bombers left, Chibster is not in a good position to deal with it. Yes, he has a heal, and he's got his repair available as well. But if that carrier times his dive bombing strikes just right, he can cause significant damage and possibly take Chibster out of the game. considering he's done so much damage at this point and is on 4 kills. Possibly a priority target to deal with. Now, you can see aircraft are appearing there, and it kind of looks like, as we'll watch them come back, that they're headed back this direction. So that could be an indication that this carrier is hiding somewhere back over by the C cap point. Considering that's the only location that hasn't been captured, or is now just being captured by the enemy team, it kind of makes sense that the carrier would be hiding back over here away from enemy vessels. Of course, their team loses their last remaining destroyer, and that Z-52 is having, or continuing to have, a fantastic game. And sure enough, there's the enemy aircraft carrier. He's popped up. He's full health. And he's got himself in a bit of a situation because he's being detected. And the ships that are detecting him, well, they're pretty stealthy. Chibster and the Minotaur, not that big of a detection circle until he fires his gun. And of course the Mogami, also same thing. You can run that pretty stealthily as well. Chibster gets the opening shots off here, and again, you can see those arcs coming in there, just sweeping in slowly. The question is he going to be able to put up a high enough volume of fire to finish off this carrier before the carrier decides to prioritize him and drop a bunch of hot 2,000-pound bombs on top of him. The anti-aircraft gunners definitely earning their pay in this battle. The carrier has decided to continue in a straight line rather than try and use this island as protection closing in, which is really what I would have done, is turned and closed in and try to keep that island between you and the person shooting at you. Unfortunately, I think the carrier player is busy dealing with other things, mostly just vectoring his aircraft in and trying to recover them and get them out. But he's on fire thanks to Mogami, who's continuing to ensure that that fire burns. But who's going to get the kill? Can it be Chibster? Can he secure his Kraken Unleash? Come on! Oh, he's almost there. Yes, he manages to do it, securing his Kraken Unleashed. And there are just 2 enemy ships left, but all 3 caps belong to his team, and so they're going to win on points here at the end of the game. And sure enough, look at that. 282,000 damage done, 11,600 XP earned in that. Confederate Dreadnought, Kraken Unleashed, Devastating Strike, and High Caliber. 5 kills, a good number of torpedo hits, and a huge chunk of damage done to cruisers and battleships in the B cap point, as well as the destroyer that decided to sit there. Top of the team for XP earned, no surprise there. Again, one of the reasons I like watching these Minotaur replays, because I see these amazing base XP numbers. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support my channel, as well as get access to my World of Warships replays when I'm playing World of Warships actively early, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. And a big shout out to Darth Gnome for your support on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships, Armored Warfare, and among other games live on Sundays at 10 a.m., you can do so by following my Twitch channel. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.